So guess who got sick and lost his voice for a little bit? So let's catch up on a few things. 28 weeks later, almost chronologically perfectly titled threequel to 28 Days Later, the movie that I think more or less falls into order as the or one of the movies that was responsible or guilty of bringing back and solidifying the zombie craze into being a thing in the early 2000s. Asked the questions, what if zombies but fast and British? Using not only zombies before everybody got sick of them, but also smeary digital photography, action horror mashup, and pounding electronic music to underscore horror action before everybody got sick of all of those. So really a whole lot of stuff before you were tired of it. And then implausibly a sequel that was almost as good, or if you ask some people, better than the first. So coming back to it after this many years was always going to face a certain amount of challenges, because how can you live up to anything so iconic in the most overplayed subgenre in the horror genre? And the answer is basically that they're not even trying. They're doing their own thing here. Flipping over the script, the originals were small movies that looked big, using relatively low budgets to tell big stories of what looked like worldwide zombie outbreak stories that were mostly contained by the logical conceit that, hey, the UK is an island. If people acted quickly, this probably wouldn't spread that far. So now we have an even smaller story, mostly concerned with a relative handful of characters, apart from a village full of supporting characters in Act 1, that turns into a pair of small quest narratives, but told with what is clearly a higher set of production values because, you know, time has marched on, effects have gotten better, cinematography aiming at a bigger, more sprawling canvas to affect more like a big traditional canvas, contrasting the beauty of outdoor cinematography with the gruesomeness of what's going on, rather than the smeary digital photography that was the point of the first one's aesthetic. This one is also involved in some world building for what is now apparently going to be a franchise full of sequels, which was not necessarily something expected going in, but which makes sense once you get into the context of it. There's a wraparound story that kicks in at the beginning and then doesn't come back around until right near the end that sets up a bigger, wider narrative, and a lot of it is, in a very skillful way, used to set up the new context of this, that this is a post-apocalyptic narrative showing off how much the general society, or lack thereof, the post-pandemic UK in this now fully alternate timeline has reshaped this entire whole part of the world. How the new evolutions of the infected work. You know, the fast ones are still around, but they're different now. There's also big, super strong, giant ones that are smarter than the originals. That was very unexpected. There's slow ones as well that kind of crawl around on all fours, so giving us a layout, almost video game-like layout of how the new enemy classes work, which is sort of important for this one, but it feels like knowing how they work is going to pay off more in the other ones, and also setting up that this is a bigger canvas, giving us implications of how the world is going to work outside of this, before settling down into a middle act built around an island community off the British coast that has ridden out the infected plague basically by only going to the mainland to forage and to train themselves up to fight the infected if they ever come knocking. And that sets up the plot of the actual story, where a father takes his son to the mainland to learn how to hunt zombies. While there, the kid, who's been worried that he's not quite up to the task, discovers that there may be a doctor still living on the mainland and thinks, hey, maybe this doctor could be of help curing his sick mother. It's part of a broader plot that the father has been trying to train the kid to be a good hunter by building him up and instilling values of being a tough guy. And you're thinking, oh, okay, all right, I've seen this story, I know where this is going. We're doing like a toxic masculinity thing where the dad is maybe not the best role model and the kid is going to learn this and grow out of it. And they are doing that, but not necessarily the way that you think they are. It's an interesting subversion of what's maybe become a somewhat tired trope in this genre, because you've seen this bit done, unlearning bad lessons of hunter-gatherer societies, which is what we're grounded in for this one, where in this one, the evolution in thought being undertaken is more that the guy has instilled in the kids this value of being a real man, and the discovery is more that it's the kid who is the real deal that the guy doesn't actually live up to. Like, okay, wow, you taught the kid to be a real man, and what the kid comes to understand is that he is of stronger moral character than the dad that was supposed to be instilling these things in him actually is. That he lives up to it more than the guy who was supposed to be teaching him. And a lot of this is more specifically British in its set of references, you know, cultural touchstones that it is drawing on, subverting, commenting on. than I think many audiences may be prepared for here in the US. There's a very obvious one that comes in at the very beginning. There's a whole through line that is all about Teletubbies, of all things, that kind of hangs over the movie. The way that it pays off kind of has to be seen to be believed. Touches of folklore, scraps of the remnants of pop culture from the old world that are still scattered around, and also intercuts newsreel footage and old movie scenes into the way, the implication being that these are the memories of what the world was, or what they thought the world was supposed to be, that these people have built their survivor community around, and how it fits their headspace. It's a really interesting bits of stuff going on. I'm trying to be purposefully vague to not spoil too much of it. The bottom line is, this is really interesting stuff on a smaller scale, but more interesting scale than I think a lot of people might be prepared for. I don't know that it totally hangs together as well as the other two do, but I think that might be because it's more ambitious in a lot of ways. It's trying to do a lot. It's trying to tell a coherent story about a child protagonist, which I was not fully expecting. They've done a really good job of keeping what this movie is actually about and what the arc of the story is completely out of this, so that this ends up being a very classical and distinctly British English boy in the wilderness becomes a man story is unexpected. The fact that the infected are a very small part of the story as a looming threat. They really sort of serve the function of the hungry wolves in the forest for this, is fascinating stuff. So I found it very interesting, very compelling. I get the sense, as is often the case when watching Danny Boyle movies, even for the number of years that I'm watching the movies, I feel like as an American, or at least as a non-resident of the UK, I feel like that so much of this is built on pop culture touchstones that are specific to that I'm only really catching about 75% of what I meant to, and I think that's kind of cool. I look forward to having the beats of this that are more meant to connect with that audience pointed out to me so that I can learn something. For now, I call this a solid 7 out of 10. I really enjoyed it. I look forward to watching it again. The new stuff with the crawling zombies, the big monster guys are awesome. There's some business in this that made me look at this and go, shit, Mortal Kombat movie, how hard was that to do? This is like the last franchise that I ever would have thought would have had so much world building and sequel setup and franchise building, but by the time it arrived, I kind of had to sit back and go, holy shit, didn't expect that, but I cannot wait to see where it's going. So yeah, bring it on. So 7 out of 10, check it out, can't wait.